I'm with Margaret Bird in her home in Broughty Ferry. Margaret and her family were very close friends of David and Agnes Dow, and Margaret and her late husband Alistair were executors of Agnes Dow's estate, and they were instrumental in setting up the Dow Memorial Trust. Margaret herself obtained her PhD from the University of Dundee and lectured in bacteriology at the university for a number of years. Margaret, tell me, how did your family's connection with the Dows first start?
It began in the early years of 1920s because my mother was a student in Dundee doing medicine. Agnes Dow, Agnes Morton as she was then, was doing an arts degree in St Andrews University, and they both were on university student committees on both sides of the Tay and became very good friends, and that friendship lasted a lifetime.
And as a young girl, you must have seen quite a bit of the Dows.
Yes, I saw them many times, and I can remember one day getting onto the tram, which I'd be about 10, I suppose, at the time, and at the next stop, Professor Dow came on, and he came and sat beside me. So we went into the town together, but as we were going past the university, he said, "Ah, Margaret, do you know what that is over there?" And I said, "I think it's the university," because I was only about 10 at the time. And he said, "Yes, well, there is only one key to unlock that door if you want to be a student." And I said, "And what's that?" He said, "You will have to work very hard at school and pass your exams so that you're eligible to be a student." And that remained with me throughout my school days.
And of course he was a great teacher, and he had a great reputation as a teacher. Can you perhaps tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, well, he was a professor of anatomy for 33 years in Dundee, and he loved his subject. He knew it was a very difficult subject to put over to young people coming in and seeing a cadaver for the first time, and he wanted to make it as interesting a subject as it was possible. And he also was passionate about the feeling that if a student got a really good education in anatomy and understood it and went out of the year a good student, then he would become, or he or she would become, a very good doctor, because they would have the basic knowledge of the body and where things were related to one another. And so he did his very best to make the subject interesting, and always tried to illustrate with some story. And an example of that would be the famous story that he always told about the little dressmaker from Perth. And she was on a tram and tripped and fell and hit her head on the curb and died. And this was because she had ruptured an artery. Now, that was an example of how a story would link with something that was going to be a medical situation. So he tried to do that as often as possible. And then, of course, the other sort of thing that he did was the unexpected. And one day, much to the surprise of the students, an acrobat arrived from a group that were playing in the Palace Theatre in Dundee. And she walked in, a most attractive girl, fair-haired, scantily clad, and the prof introduced her as being an acrobat and said, would you mind lying on the bench where I give my lectures? So to a lot of cheering from all the students, she got onto the bench and lay down. And then he proceeded to examine her and show all the different places that muscles attached to other muscles, and she was able to do the most extraordinary movements, which was, so unique compared to what you would expect from an ordinary person. And so that was a great success.
And the students must have loved it.
Oh, they loved it, and they cheered and they banged the desks. It was just a very happy occasion. And then there was a great bond between Professor Dow and the students. The students loved him, and he was very fond of the students.
Agnes had a very interesting career as well, didn't she?
She did. She was appointed to the Dunfermline College for physical training of young ladies, as they called them in those days, and as the medical officer of health. And she spent a lot of time with them, and she taught anatomy there and also in St Andrews. And she was with them right through until she retired. But one thing that I must say was that she, again, like the Prof, was very popular with the students, and they all just called her Doc Dow.
But she gave all that up when David became Master of Queen's College.
That's right. And she just felt that she wanted to be with him and help him as much as possible, because it was a huge task. And of course he was the first Master of Queen's College. If he was going to a difficult meeting, and she knew that it was a difficult meeting, she would say as he left the house, "Now David, remember, don't fight with anybody." And he hesitated and then turned to her and he said, "Agnes, I have never fought with anybody unless it was absolutely necessary." So, he always had it's all the funny side of things.
Well, after Agnes died in 1998, the Dow Memorial Trust was set up, and of course you were involved in that. And it's now been going for about 12 years. Mm-hmm. Every year it's awarded some 5 or 6 scholarships to needy medical and dental students as they've entered the university, and they've also the trust has also funded the student support scheme and various other activities. But the funding of the clinical simulation suite is the largest award that the trust has made to date. It's probably worth about £600,000. Supposing David and Agnes Dow were with us today, what do you think they'd be saying about it?
Well, for one thing, they would have been absolutely amazed at the modern technology and what is available now compared to what was in their day. And they would have just loved to go around and see everything and realise what use can be made by both the teachers and the students with the equipment that is now available. And I think the Prof would just have been unable to believe what is now here. And I'm sure that they would both want to say thank you to everyone who has been involved in getting this to this stage. And the fact that their name is associated with it would have given them great pride.